So much of the past is missing. You can feel it, not in the pages of history books, but in the empty spaces between them. In the ruins that rise from jungle floors, carved with patterns no one can explain. In the half-buried stones by the shore, worn by tides older than our stories. In the maps with coastlines that should not exist. It's as if the record of our world has been rewritten, not once, but many times. Civilizations rise, vanish, and leave only whispers in myth and legend. And every so often, a fragment surfaces, out of place, out of time, like a voice calling from another age, a reminder that we might not be the first to walk this earth with power and knowledge. The deeper you follow that voice, the more you realize the truth isn't lost, it's hidden, and maybe someone meant it to stay that way. You were told that history was a straight line, one age leading into the next, each neatly replacing the one before, like pages turned in a book that has only one beginning. But the more you look, the more that line begins to fracture. You start to see it not as a single thread, but as a tapestry that has been torn apart. Pieces missing, patterns cut away, whole sections rewoven to hide what was there before. It begins with the anomalies, the kind no one in official archaeology seems eager to explain. A block of stone, quarried, shaped, and fitted with such precision that a blade cannot pass between it. Yet it is found in a place where no civilization was supposed to have the tools to cut it. A coastline mapped centuries before explorers are said to have seen it. The remains of a city lying beneath layers of sediment dated to a time when, according to history, there should have been no cities at all. Imagine walking into a vast hall of records, only to find that entire shelves are empty. Dust outlines where books once stood. Here and there a volume remains, its pages fragile, its cover worn by hands you will never know. You leaf through them, catching glimpses of events that are not supposed to exist. Great fleets crossing oceans before the age of sail. Astronomical charts plotted with a precision we only achieved in recent centuries. Myths that seem less like stories and more like eyewitness accounts. The further you look, the stranger the echoes become. Legends from opposite sides of the world tell of a time before this time, of an age of greatness brought low by catastrophe. Sometimes it is a flood, sometimes fire, sometimes the sky itself turns against its people, and always, at the center, there is a civilization, powerful, learned, and now gone, its memory lingering like a ghost that refuses to fade. You stand before these fragments as if they are shards of a shattered mirror. They do not show you the whole picture, only fractured images, a temple roof half buried in desert sand, a wall of cyclopean stone clinging to a cliff, a pillar inscribed with symbols no one alive can read. You can feel the weight of ages pressing against them. The stones are silent, but their silence is not empty. It is guarded, deliberate, as if they are keeping a secret until the right eyes look upon them. And that is when the question begins to burn. What if the timeline we inherited is not the full story? What if we are living in the aftermath of another age, a great civilization erased so completely that we are only now finding the pieces? And if that is true, what does it mean for the story we tell ourselves about who we are? It begins as a murmur, so faint you almost mistake it for your own thoughts. A pattern you notice in the oldest myths, the way they lean toward a memory of something before the dawn. In each, there is talk of a first age, a mother empire, a golden world from which all others sprang. Not a single culture claims it as wholly their own. Instead, they speak of it like an inheritance carried by strangers who arrive from far away, bringing seeds of knowledge to plant in the soil of the new. In the Pacific, some call it Mu. In the high plateaus of South America, it is a place remembered in names older than Inca. In the desert sands of Egypt, it exists as Zep Tepi, the first time, when the gods walked among men and built the foundations of the world. And in the islands of Polynesia, the songs still speak of ancestors who crossed impossible distances, guided by stars, winds, and signs that no modern navigator can read. The details shift, but the tone is always the same. Reverence, mixed with loss. They speak of a world rich in cities, temples, and towers, whose tops touched the clouds. Of a people who knew the stars as if they were old friends, who could draw power from the earth itself, and whose ships moved without sails. They could cross oceans as easily as a hunter crosses a stream. And then, something happened. The songs do not say exactly what, but they all agree. The first empire fell. You imagine it as a map drawn in light. The coastlines gleaming in the darkness, great river deltas feeding green lands, high roads tracing the backs of mountains, ports where hundreds of ships waited for the signal to depart, the hum of life in every street, the scent of strange flowers in the air mixed with the spice of markets and the salt of the sea. And above it all, an architecture that seems both alien and familiar. Stone fitted so perfectly as seems to have grown from the rock. Surfaces that catch the sun in ways that change with the seasons. Statues that gaze toward the horizon as if waiting for something to return. Some fragments suggest they were not alone, that their leaders, tall, luminous, strange, were the bearers of a knowledge not born on this earth. Some call them gods, some call them sky people, and some refuse to give them a name at all. But the echoes they left are unmistakable, in glyphs carved into basalt cliffs, in astronomical alignments etched into the ground itself, in the uncanny way that myths from lands separated by oceans describe the same figures, the same gifts, the same sudden disappearance. You begin to suspect that the First Empire was not just one place, but a network, a web that stretched across continents, its threads of stone and story binding together a world that no longer exists. And if that is true, then the question is not whether it happened, but why we are not meant to remember it. Beneath the endless blue of the Pacific, there are places where the seafloor rises into drowned mountains, their peaks just brushing the surface before plunging back into the abyss. To most, they are just geological features, volcanic remnants, tectonic scars. But to those who listen to the old stories, they are the bones of a continent that once stretched across the ocean, Mu. The first time you hear the name, it is like a note struck on an ancient instrument, simple, resonant, and impossible to forget. Some say the word survives in the chants of Polynesian navigators, in the syllables of place names scattered across islands thousands of miles apart. Others point to tablets from Easter Island, etched with a script no one has yet deciphered, their lines curling like waves frozen in stone. In the ruins of Nan Madol in Micronesia, basalt columns rise from the shallows in a labyrinth that feels less like a fortress and more like the foundation of something far greater. According to fragments recorded in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Mu was not merely a large island, it was a sprawling landmass, home to a civilization older than Egypt, Sumer, or the Indus Valley. Its people were said to be tall, with broad foreheads and eyes that seemed to catch the light like gemstones. They knew the sea not as a barrier, but as a highway. They carved their knowledge into pillars of white stone and measured time by the dance of constellations. In the stories, Mu was a place of balance. Temples stood at the meeting points of ley lines, those invisible paths of energy that some still claim crisscross the globe. The cities were laid out in harmony with the stars, their plazas designed to channel wind, light, and shadow, as if the architecture itself breathed. Crops grew in terraces that curved like seashells, watered by aqueducts that ran cool and clean from the mountains. Gold was not for wealth, but for function, lined into chambers said to focus the earth's own power. And then, the end came. Some say it was the wrath of the gods, others a war with an empire beyond the horizon. There are whispers of fire falling from the sky, of the ground cracking open, of waves that rose higher than the tallest temple. The sea swallowed the land, leaving only scattered survivors to carry fragments of Mu's knowledge to other shores. In the centuries that followed, these fragments would seed the rise of later civilizations, but the memory of their source would fade into myth. Yet even today, there are hints. In the Marquesas Islands, stone platforms stand on remote cliffs where no roads lead. In Japan's Yonaguni, divers swim over steps and terraces carved into the rock beneath the waves, their edges still sharp despite the centuries underwater. In South America, legends tell of bearded strangers who came from the west, speaking of a drowned homeland beginnings in this ocean. And perhaps that is why the ocean guards it so jealously, because some truths, once seen, cannot be forgotten. Stand before the Great Pyramid of Giza, and you feel it immediately. That pull in your chest, as if the air itself remembers something you do not. The limestone blocks rise in geometric precision toward a point that seems to touch the sky. Each stone is massive, yet they are fitted together with a precision so fine you could not slip a piece of paper between them. You are told this was the work of ancient Egyptians, built as a tomb for a king. But across the oceans, in lands the Egyptians are said never to have reached, other pyramids rise, each echoing the same impossible blueprint. In Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun stands almost identical in base size to Giza's Great Monument, aligned not just to the sun, but to the stars. In the jungles of Guatemala, the temples of Tikal pierce the canopy, their stairways steep and narrow, as if built for a different stride. Deep in the Chinese province of Shanxi, enormous earthen pyramids hide beneath layers of vegetation, their existence largely unspoken in official history. And further still, in the ruins of Caral in Peru, in Sudan's Nubian desert, in the buried city of Cahokia, pyramidal forms rise again and again, like a memory carved into the DNA of humanity. The similarities go beyond shape. Many of these structures share astronomical alignments so precise they rival modern instruments. Their corners point to cardinal directions with only fractions of a degree in error. Some align to the rising of Orion's belt or the Pleiades, others to solstices and equinoxes. It is as though each was part of a global map, an interlocking network of markers that tied Earth to the sky. But here is the question no one in the lecture halls will answer. How did cultures separated by oceans, with no known contact, conceive of and build the same monumental form with such shared precision? Coincidence? Parallel evolution of ideas? Or the inheritance of a design from a civilization that came before them all? Legends often hint at a source. The Maya spoke of visitors from the sea who carried a sacred geometry. The ancient Egyptians told of Thoth, the god who brought the blueprint of their temples from a time before the Nile. In Polynesia, some stories say the ancestors built terraced platforms to mirror mountains that rose from the first world. Across these myths, the pyramid is more than a tomb or temple. It is a device, a bridge between the earthly and the divine. And then there is the matter of materials. Granite, limestone, basalt, stones with high crystalline content, capable of interacting with electromagnetic fields. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid's inner chambers are lined with granite containing quartz, while its outer casing was once made of polished Tura limestone, highly reflective and electrically insulating. In Bosnia, controversial excavations have claimed to find pyramids with similar stone architecture. Why choose materials with such specific energetic properties? What if the pyramid form was not just symbolic, but functional, part of a technology whose purpose we have forgotten? Some suggest energy generation, others communication, Still others, a kind of resonance that allowed connection with forces we can no longer measure. When you trace the map of these pyramids around the world, the pattern is too consistent to ignore. It is less like a scattering of monuments and more like the remnants of a global blueprint, a signal sent across millennia, repeating the same shape so it would survive even after the civilization that built it was gone. Look long enough at the ancient stones and you begin to see it, the way they are always watching the sky. Pyramids, temples, stone circles, and monoliths, all oriented toward points in the heavens as if answering to a call from above. To the ancients, the sky was not a distant emptiness. It was alive, populated, and, if the oldest stories are to be believed, visited. From the deserts of Mesopotamia to the plateaus of the Andes, myths speak of beings who descended from the heavens. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki, great ones who came to shape humanity's destiny. In Egypt, they were the Neteru, divine rulers who arrived in Zep Tepi the first time, and taught the arts of building, writing, and governance. Across the ocean in the Americas, the Maya and Aztec revered Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a teacher from the sky who brought wisdom and left with the promise to return. The details vary, but the structure of the story is eerily consistent. The arrival of luminous beings, the sharing of advanced knowledge, the transformation of human society, and then the departure. Sometimes they vanish into the sky, sometimes they sink into the sea, sometimes they retreat to hidden places on earth, but they always leave a legacy mapped into stone and myth. And in almost every case, they leave a map, not of territories, but of stars. The pyramids of Giza mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt. The temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia echo the pattern of the constellation Draco. The massive earthen serpent mound of Ohio aligns with the phases of the moon and the movements of the sun. The Nazca lines in Peru, geoglyphs so vast they can only be fully seen from the air, depict animals, spirals, and straight lines pointing towards solstice sunrises and distant star positions. It is as if these builders were not merely recording the sky, but replicating it, bringing the heavens down to earth in stone. Why? To honor the gods? To guide their spirits after death? Or perhaps to maintain a kind of connection, a resonance between the ground beneath their feet and the constellations their visitors called home? Some ancient accounts speak plainly of these connections. The Dogon people of Mali claim knowledge of Sirius B, a companion star invisible to the naked eye and undiscovered by modern astronomy until the 19th century. In Aboriginal Australian traditions, the Wandjina are sky beings painted with large eyes and no mouths, descending in clouds to shape the land. In the Andes, Inca priests told of Viracocha, a bearded figure who arrived during a time of darkness and taught humanity how to live before disappearing across the ocean. Mainstream historians call these myths projections of the human imagination onto the night sky. But taken together, the similarities are hard to dismiss. If these were just stories, why do they echo so precisely from culture to culture, continent to continent? And why do the monuments that honor them align so perfectly with celestial coordinates, as if following a shared ancient instruction? You begin to realize that the maps carved into stone and earth may not be maps at all, but signatures, markers left behind by the very beings the myths describe, coordinates, messages, perhaps even invitations. And if that is true, then the question is not whether they came, but when they will return. In nearly every ancient kingdom, the rulers claimed a birthright that set them apart from the people they governed. They were not merely leaders, they were living symbols of a connection to the divine. In Sumer, the first kings were said to have descended from heaven. In Egypt, the pharaohs carried the blood of the Neteru, the gods themselves. In Mesoamerica, the high priests of Teotihuacan and the Maya traced their lineage to beings who came from the stars. And in the mountains of Peru, the Inca emperors called themselves children of the sun, as if the sun were more than just a ball of fire in the sky. These claims were not poetic flourishes, they were political and sacred. In societies where the divine and the earthly were inseparable, to possess godly blood was to wield unquestionable authority. But scattered through the myths are unsettling details: rulers taller than their subjects, skulls elongated not by culture but by nature, eyes described as strangely luminous, skin pale or copper-toned in lands where such features were rare. Archaeologists explain some of these traits as results of ritual cranial deformation, selective marriage, or exaggeration in myth, but in certain cases, the bones tell a different story. Mummies with elongated skulls in Paracas, Peru, reveal cranial volumes larger than average and structures inconsistent with artificial shaping. In Egypt, some royal mummies exhibit genetic markers that seem unusual compared to the surrounding population. These are whispers from the deep past, hints that something else might have shaped the royal bloodlines. Legends often connect these rulers to unions between humans and the sky beings described in older myths. In the Book of Enoch, the Watchers descended and took human wives, producing offspring of immense stature and power, the Nephilim. In Greek myth, the gods regularly fathered children with mortals, creating heroes who were stronger, faster, or more cunning than ordinary men. In Polynesia, navigators told of marriages between seafaring strangers from distant islands and local women, resulting in children with unusual abilities. If we take these stories at face value, they suggest the possibility of a genetic legacy left by visitors from elsewhere, whether from another land, another time, or another world entirely. A legacy carefully guarded, passed from generation to generation in an unbroken chain, ensuring that the rulers of each new civilization retained some trace of the first ones. The architecture of power often reflected this belief. Thrones raised on high platforms, palaces surrounded by walls etched with celestial symbols, burial chambers aligned with constellations, reminders that the ruler's authority came from above. The coronation rituals themselves often reenacted a union between heaven and earth, as if to renew the bond each generation. But over time, something changed. In many cultures, the connection to the divine blood faded from the public eye. The lineages dissolved, their origins forgotten or recast as pure legend. Yet, if these bloodlines were real, they may not have vanished completely. Some believe that traces of them still exist, hidden in families whose histories stretch back into the unrecorded past. Their influence felt not through thrones and crowns, but through wealth, secrecy, and the ability to shape the course of history from the shadows. If so, the story of human civilization is not just the story of us. It is the story of something older, living on through us. A thread of inheritance that might explain not only our ancient myths, but also the strange persistence of certain symbols, certain patterns of rule, and certain secrets that never seem to fade. Across every continent, in the oldest stories we have, there is a day when the world drowns. In Sumer, it is a flood sent by the gods to cleanse the earth of the giants and restore balance. In the Hebrew tradition, it is the deluge that spares only Noah and his ark. In India's Mahabharata, the sage Manu is warned by a divine fish to build a vessel before the waters rise. The Maya tell of floods that destroyed the earlier creations of humanity, leaving only those who could climb the highest peaks. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia speak of the time the sea swallowed the lowlands, forcing their ancestors to retreat inland. These are not vague tales. They are filled with specific images: waves that reach mountaintops, cities vanishing beneath foam, whole forests torn up by the roots. The timelines differ, but the theme is universal. A cataclysm so vast, it wipes away not just lives, but memory. Geology offers its own testimony. Around 12,800 years ago, at the close of the last ice age, the Younger Dryas event struck, a sudden return to glacial cold, accompanied by dramatic rises in sea levels. Some scientists suggest the cause may have been a comet impact or a series of massive meltwater pulses that sent walls of water rushing into the oceans. Whatever the cause, coastlines shifted. Vast stretches of habitable land were lost. If there was an advanced civilization before our own, this would have been the perfect erasure. Imagine a network of cities and ports thriving along ancient shorelines, gone in weeks as the ocean advanced. Survivors scattered, taking with them fragments of knowledge, but losing the infrastructure that made it possible to rebuild what they had. Within a few generations, stories would replace records, and the survivors' descendants would live among ruins they could no longer understand. Some ruins today seem to hint at this very pattern. Off the coast of India, in the Gulf of Khambat, sonar has revealed geometric structures beneath 40 meters of water, in a region that was dry land until the seas rose. Near Yonaguni, Japan, terraces and steps cut into the bedrock sit far below the waves, their edges still sharp. In the Mediterranean, submerged cities lie just offshore in places like Pavlopetri, Greece, and Baiae, Italy, reminders of how quickly the sea can reclaim the shore. And then there is the uncanny alignment of flood myths with the locations of megalithic sites. In some cases, the same cultures that told of the great waters also left behind massive stone architecture, too large and too precise for the tools they supposedly had. Could these have been the survivors' attempt to anchor their legacy in something the flood could not wash away? You begin to see the flood not as an isolated event, but as a reset, a deliberate line drawn between then and now, whether by nature or by was meant to reopen. And yet, the memory persisted. In whispered stories, in stone alignments that still point to where the sun rose before the poles shifted, in symbols carved into rock far from any known coastline. Enough survived to suggest that before us there was another us, one that faced the ocean's judgment and vanished beneath it. Some ruins do not just survive the passage of time, they defy it. You run your hand along the stone at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, and it is cold, impossibly smooth. The blocks are vast, weighing many tons, yet they are shaped to fit each other with organic precision. No mortar, no gaps, every curve matched as if the stones had grown together. In Egypt's Aswan quarry lies an unfinished obelisk, its sides perfectly straight, its surface showing tool marks unlike anything in our repertoire. In Baalbek, Lebanon, the trilithon stones weigh over 800 tons each. Lifted and placed at a height modern cranes would struggle to reach. The official explanations vary. Copper chisels, ropes, ramps, manpower in the tens of thousands. But the more you examine the stones, the harder these explanations are to accept. In some cases, the cuts appear as if the rock had been softened, shaped, and hardened again, an approach that would require a mastery of material science we are only beginning to approach today. In others, the polish and flatness suggest tools that could cut with laser-like precision. What if these civilizations possessed methods not just lost, but deliberately erased? Legends hint at machines that could levitate stone through sound or vibration. The Egyptian temple inscriptions speak of Shem, instruments capable of lifting great weights. In the Andes, Quechua stories tell of builders who played a certain note on a horn and caused stones to float into place. Even in the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant is described with properties that sound almost technological, a device of power, not just a symbol. And then there are the structures themselves, which sometimes appear to be more than architecture. The Great Pyramid's internal chambers resonate at specific frequencies. Its base rests on limestone containing water channels, which some researchers speculate could generate subtle electrical currents. The Sun Gate at Tiwanaku, in Bolivia, is carved from a single block of andesite, its design aligning with astronomical events but also with acoustic focal points, as if meant to channel sound or energy. Materials, too, tell their own story. Ancient cements in some sites are stronger than modern equivalents. In India's Iron Pillar of Delhi, the metal has resisted corrosion for over 1,600 years, thanks to a protective layer that forms naturally, a technique lost until rediscovered by modern metallurgy. In certain megalithic walls, the stone contains magnetic anomalies, as though intentionally infused with properties that interact with the Earth's field. Skeptics argue that all of this can be explained by trial, error, and human ingenuity over time. But if so, why are there no intermediate steps? No clear progression from crude methods to these advanced feats? Why do so many of these techniques vanish abruptly from the record, leaving later builders struggling to match them? You start to suspect that these were not isolated innovations, remnants of a broader technological understanding, one that allowed the manipulation of stone, energy, and perhaps even gravity in ways we can barely imagine. If that knowledge belonged to a civilization before ours, then its disappearance was not an accident, it was a dismantling. And what is most unsettling is this: some of these properties are still measurable today. A tuning fork hums in a chamber, and its sound carries for minutes without fading. A compass needle twitches near a certain carved lintel. Your skin prickles as you step into the shadow of a monolith aligned with the midsummer sun. These are not just ruins. They are silent machines, still humming with a power we do not understand. In the oldest stories, there are always those who break the rules. Among the Sumerians, they are called the Anunnaki. But within that vast pantheon, there are whispers of a smaller group, the ones who came not to rule, but to teach. In the Hebrew Book of Enoch, they are the Watchers, angels sent to observe humanity, who instead gave us forbidden knowledge. They taught metallurgy and weapon making, the art of cosmetics, the secrets of astrology. They showed humans how to read the stars, how to till the land, how to build. And for this defiance, they were cast down, chained, and condemned. The pattern repeats across the world. In Greece, the Titan Prometheus steals fire from the gods and gives it to mankind. Fire not just of warmth, but of innovation, the spark of technology. In Polynesian lore, the trickster hero Maui hauls the islands up from the sea and snatches fire for his people. In the myths of the Dogon, the Nomo arrive from the star Sirius, bringing law, order, and crafts. Always there is a gift, and always there is a price. What is striking is how specific some of these gifts are. They are not vague blessings or metaphors, but practical knowledge. Smelting ore, understanding the calendar, using sound to heal or to build. Skills that, if given suddenly, could leapfrog centuries of slow human development. But they also carry the seeds of destruction. Metals can be used for plows or for swords. Astronomy can guide crops or war fleets. Perhaps that was the point. Some ancient sites seem to bear the fingerprint of these interventions. In the ruins of Göbekli Tepe, 11,000 years old, megalithic pillars are carved with animals, celestial patterns, and abstract symbols, as if preserving the memory of lessons taught by someone who understood both the earth and the sky. No one knows why it was deliberately buried, as though hiding the knowledge it contained. In the mountains of Bolivia, Puma Punku's perfectly cut stones look as though they were machined. Local legend says they were built in a single night by gods with trumpets of thunder. You begin to see the Watchers not as distant mythical beings, but as the possible remnants of an earlier civilization. Survivors of a cataclysm who scattered their knowledge among the peoples of the New World. To those they taught, they must have seemed like gods. To those who guarded the old order, they were dangerous. And so the stories always end the same way. The givers of knowledge are punished. Their works are destroyed or hidden. The people they helped are scattered or silenced. The record is reduced to myth, so that future generations will hear it as a fable, not a memory. But the gifts themselves remain. You can still see them in the sudden appearance of agriculture in multiple regions, in the inexplicable leap from simple huts to monumental architecture, in the uncanny precision of ancient astronomical observatories. They are embedded in the blueprint of human civilization like code, left behind by a programmer no one remembers. If there were watchers, then their punishment was not enough to erase their work. And perhaps that is why, even now, fragments of their knowledge still surface, in ruins and symbols, in the persistent sense that some part of what we know is not ours alone. The ocean hides its dead well. It is a perfect vault, lightless, cold, and patient. What it takes, it keeps. And for thousands of years, it has kept the bones of cities, the outlines of harbors, the roads and walls of civilizations that no longer have names. You can see their shapes if you know where to look. In the Bay of Cambay, off the coast of India, sonar scans have revealed symmetrical grids of stone structures, buried beneath 40 meters of water. Divers report streets, walls, and what may be the remains of stepped pyramids, all dated to a time when this coastline was dry, long before any civilization is supposed to have existed there. Off the Japanese island of Yonaguni, terraces, platforms, and stairways rise from the sea floor like the skeleton of a drowned temple. Mainstream archaeology calls it a natural formation, but the right angles, tool-like grooves, and deliberate symmetry say otherwise. Further west, in the Mediterranean, lie the submerged ruins of Pavlopetri, Greece, over 5,000 years old and remarkably preserved. There are streets, courtyards, and buildings laid out in patterns we still use today. In Alexandria's harbor, statues, columns, and temple blocks rest beneath silt, remnants of the Ptolemaic capital claimed by the sea. Off the coast of Cuba, explorers using submersibles have photographed massive stone blocks arranged in geometric patterns, sitting in deep water where no city should be. It is not just the ruins themselves that haunt you. It is their locations. Many are exactly where ancient flood myths say great cities once stood. Many lie along the same global patterns you've seen before. Alignments with star maps, with old coastlines, with the roots of long-lost maritime trade. It's as though the ocean has covered not random settlements, but key nodes in a forgotten network. Legends remember them. In the Atlantic, there is Atlantis, Plato's island empire sunk in a single day and night. In India, Dwarka, the golden city of Krishna, said to have vanished beneath the waves. In Southeast Asia, tales of Kumari Kandam speak of a vast land south of India, now beneath the sea. The Polynesians tell of Hawaii, their mythic homeland, gone but not forgotten. If these were mere stories, they would not match the locations where sonar, diving expeditions, and satellite mapping now find actual structures. And yet they do, again and again. The question that lingers is whether these cities fell victim to the same event or series of events that reset the world in the last ice age. Were they the last outposts of a dying civilization, or the thriving heart of an age we have no record of? If they were connected, what was lost when the ocean claimed them was not just stone and mortar. It was the memory of who we... The streets are still there, waiting. If history's a story, then someone is holding the pen. And sometimes it feels as though entire chapters have been torn out, not by time, but by intent. Artifacts vanish from excavation sites, only to reappear years later in private collections. Ancient manuscripts are locked away in climate-controlled vaults, accessible only to a handful of approved scholars. Satellite images of certain regions arrive blurred or cropped, as if something on the ground should not be seen. You notice patterns in the absence. Restricted zones around archaeological sites, declared off-limits for preservation, yet never reopened. Expeditions halted without explanation. Researchers silenced with funding cuts, or professional ruin after presenting evidence that does not fit the approved timeline. In the Pacific, divers speak of being ordered away from certain undersea ruins by environmental protection authorities who show no interest in protecting any other patch of reef. In the Arctic and Antarctic, reports of unusual structures vanish from public record within days. There are moments when the veil slips. A declassified document here, a leaked photograph there, a few seconds of shaky video showing something that should not exist, a megalith in waters too deep for ancient builders, a chamber beneath a desert floor lit by artificial means, a fragment of stone inscribed with a language no culture claims. And then the source disappears. The image is discredited. The witness recants. It is easy to dismiss such accounts as paranoia. But consider this: the official story of humanity is fragile. It depends on a narrow range of evidence, carefully curated, its boundaries patrolled by institutions that decide what is history and what is fantasy. If a discovery were to prove that an advanced civilization existed tens of thousands of years before the accepted timeline, it would not just rewrite textbooks. It would dismantle entire fields of study, invalidate centuries of scholarship, and shift the balance of cultural identity around the world. Some suggest the custodians are acting out of protection, that humanity is not ready for the truth, that to reveal the full scope of our past would destabilize nations, religions, economies. Others suspect a more self-serving motive: control. If knowledge is power, then knowing the true origins of civilization and the technologies it may have possessed is the ultimate advantage. The deeper you follow the trail, the more it feels less like random obstruction and more like the maintenance of a script, one where we are told we began in simplicity and have climbed step by step to the pinnacle of our abilities, one where the possibility of a forgotten age of greatness is left in the realm of legend, where it can do no harm to the present order. And yet, despite the locked doors and the sealed archives, fragments still slip through. A photograph of a submerged ruin passed quietly from diver to diver. A translation, forbidden tablet, copied by hand and smuggled across borders. A star map carved into a cave wall, preserved not in a museum, but in the memory of those who know where to find it. The custodians may control the ink, but the paper is vast. And somewhere, in the margins they cannot erase, the truth is still written. The more you piece together the fragments, the harder it is to see human history as a straight ascent. It feels instead like a tide, rising, falling, erasing its own footprints before beginning again. Civilizations bloom, reach heights we can scarcely imagine, then vanish so completely that only the barest traces survive. You start to notice the rhythm. Myths speak of golden ages followed by cataclysms. Geological records show sudden shifts, climate swings, floods, volcanic winters, occurring in cycles that span thousands of years. Archaeology uncovers bursts of advancement where technologies and cultural complexity appear fully formed without the slow buildup you would expect. It is as if humanity has been here before, many times. In this light, the ruins scattered across deserts, jungles, and seabeds are not the relics of an ancient past, but the gravestones of previous worlds. Each one a reminder that our story may be far older and far more fragile than we dare to admit. The temples align to long-forgotten star positions. The cities drowned along coastlines that no longer exist. The technologies hinted at in myths and half-buried artifacts. These are not anomalies. They are the pattern. If the cycle is real, it carries a warning. We are not immune. The same forces, cosmic or earthly, that ended the ages before could come again. A shift in the heavens, a surge in the oceans, a war that burns too hot. Our monuments, our cities, our satellites, they too could be reduced to silence and dust, leaving the next civilization to wonder who we were. But perhaps that is why the fragments persist, why the myths endure, why certain symbols reappear across millennia, as if to say, "You have been here before. Do not forget." Maybe the survivors of the last cycle tried to leave us a trail, maps in the stars, warnings carved into stone, alignments and monuments that would outlast even the languages that built them. The question is whether we are willing to see them, whether we can recognize the signs before the tide turns again. Because if the cycle has one constant, it is this: the past is never truly gone. It waits, just beneath the surface, for the next hand to brush away the dust. And when that happens, when the mirror of time gives us a glimpse of the worlds before ours, we will have to decide, will we listen to what they are trying to tell us, or will we, like those before, let the truth slip back into the silence?